There are moments in life when you pause and you realize that the same patterns keep repeating. The same pain, the same disappointment, the same habits that drain your energy, your confidence, your identity. Awareness is the first and most transformative step because it forces you to look directly at the patterns that have been quietly shaping your life. Most people live inside cycles without ever realizing they exist. They repeat the same emotional reactions, the same choices, the same relationships, believing it is simply life or destiny. But cycles do not come from destiny. They come from unconscious repetition. And unconscious repetition continues for years, sometimes decades, simply because no one stops to examine what is actually happening beneath the surface. Awareness is the moment when the fog begins to lift. It is when you pause long enough to ask yourself, why does this feel familiar? Why do I keep ending up here? What emotion, belief, or fear is directing my actions without my permission? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are powerful. They disrupt autopilot. They interrupt the momentum of old habits. They force you to turn inward instead of seeking external reasons for internal struggles. When you become aware, you realize that every repeated cycle, whether emotional, behavioral, or relational, has a root. Something inside you is feeding it. It might be fear of abandonment, causing you to accept less than you deserve. It might be low self-worth, making you settle for situations that drain you. It might be impatience, pushing you to react rather than reflect. It might be the subconscious desire to avoid discomfort, even if the comfort zone is slowly hurting you. Awareness brings these internal forces into the light, where you can finally see them clearly. Awareness also means recognizing your own contribution to the cycle without blaming yourself. This is important. Self-blame closes your heart and keeps you stuck. Self-awareness opens it. When you see your behavior with honesty rather than judgment, you begin to understand that you are not the victim of circumstances. You are the participant. And if you can participate in creating the cycle, you can also participate in breaking it. Many people try to change their lives by modifying what is outside: a new job, a new relationship, a new location. But the cycle follows them because the internal script was never rewritten. Awareness helps you identify that script. You begin to see the thoughts that appear automatically, the triggers that activate old wounds, the beliefs you inherited from childhood or past experiences, and the emotions you never learned to regulate. You start to connect the dots between what you feel, what you think, and what you do. Awareness also brings responsibility, not as a burden, but as empowerment. The moment you understand what you are doing, you gain the ability to choose differently. You can observe the impulse without obeying it. You can feel the emotion without letting it control you. You can recognize the pattern the moment it begins, rather than after it has already hurt you. This is why awareness is powerful. It gives you back the control you didn't know you had lost. It transforms the unconscious into the conscious, and the cycle begins to weaken the moment you finally see it. Cycles continue not simply because life is difficult, but because in some way, often silently, unknowingly, you contribute to them. This idea is not about blaming yourself. It is about understanding the invisible role you play in the patterns that keep returning. Every cycle, even the painful ones, survives because something inside you feeds it. That something might be fear, habit, comfort, or even a belief you have carried for so long that it feels like the truth. When you look closely, you begin to realize that your actions, your reactions, and even your silence shape the experiences you attract or tolerate. Sometimes the contribution is subtle. You answer a message you shouldn't. You give someone another chance, even after they've shown you who they are. You stay in an environment that drains you because leaving feels overwhelming. These are choices, tiny decisions, small permissions that strengthen the cycle brick by brick. And because these choices feel familiar, they rarely register as harmful in the moment. Familiarity feels safe, even when it is slowly breaking you. Your participation also comes from the beliefs you hold about yourself. If you believe you are not worthy of love, you will accept relationships that reflect that belief. If you believe conflict means abandonment, you will avoid honest communication and repeat situations where your voice goes unheard. If you believe your past defines you, you will unconsciously recreate the same emotional experiences again and again. The mind seeks what it knows, not what it needs. And so you return to the cycle because it feels like home, even when it hurts. Another way you contribute is through emotional patterns. When something triggers you, you react automatically. You withdraw, you chase, you overthink, or you numb yourself. These emotional reactions are not conscious choices. They are learned responses from earlier experiences. But every time you repeat them, you reinforce the cycle. You strengthen the neural pathways that say, "This is how I respond to this kind of situation." And without awareness, those responses keep running your life. Your silence is another form of contribution. Silence in moments where you needed to speak. Silence in moments where boundaries were required. Silence when someone crossed the line and you let it pass because confrontation felt too heavy. Silence does not neutralize the cycle. It nourishes it. It tells the world that you are willing to carry the weight quietly. Avoidance is also a contributor. Avoiding decisions, avoiding change, avoiding the work required to shift your life. Avoidance creates space for the cycle to grow. What you do not confront, you repeat. Even fear contributed. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of discomfort, fear of losing what feels familiar. Fear convinces you that staying where you are is safer than breaking free. And so you remain in the cycle, believing you have no choice, when in reality, fear is choosing for you. Recognizing your role is the beginning of empowerment. When you understand and own your contribution, not with judgment, but with honesty, you realize that nothing changes until you change what you bring into the pattern. Personal mastery is the foundation of breaking any cycle, because nothing in your external world can truly shift if your inner world remains undisciplined, reactive, and unexamined. Mastery is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming aware of the forces inside you that shape your actions, your emotions, and your decisions. Most cycles continue because the mind is scattered, the heart is unsettled, and the body follows old habits without conscious intention. When these three, heart and body, move without alignment, you end up repeating experiences you never wanted to live again. Mastery of the mind begins with understanding that your thoughts are not commands. They are suggestions, impulses, echoes of past experiences. The mind projects fears, creates assumptions, and invents stories based on memories, not reality. When you lack mental discipline, you accept these thoughts as truth and you act from them. You might withdraw because you assume rejection is coming. You might get angry because you assume someone meant harm. You might sabotage opportunities because you assume you're not ready. Mastery allows you to pause, observe, and respond instead of blindly reacting. It teaches you to separate what the mind imagines from what is actually happening. Mastery of the heart involves regulating emotions rather than allowing them to control you. Emotional reactions are powerful because they come from a place deeper than logic. They come from wounds, desires, fears, and memories. When emotions are not mastered, they dictate your behavior. You repeat cycles because a familiar emotion pulls you back into familiar situations. You return to someone who hurt you because loneliness feels heavier than memory. You trust quickly because your heart seeks connection. Even at the cost of clarity, you avoid difficult conversations because conflict reminds you of past pain. Mastery does not suppress emotions, it teaches you to feel without being flooded, to understand the origin of the feeling and to act from strength rather than from emotional impulse. Mastery of the body is often overlooked, yet it is essential. The body carries habits, patterns of movement, posture, breath, and tension that reflect your internal state. Your body remembers what your mind forgets. When you are anxious, your breathing becomes shallow. When you are insecure, your posture collapses. When you are overwhelmed, your body reacts before you have time to think. These physical reactions anchor you to old cycles because the body leads the mind back into familiar emotional states. Mastery comes through awareness of breath, stability, grounding, and calm physical presence. When the body becomes steady, the mind follows. True mastery is the alignment of mind, heart, and body so that you are not driven by impulse, fear, or old patterns. It allows you to choose your actions with clarity, rather than being controlled by past conditioning. This discipline is not about harshness. It is about consistency. It is built through daily decisions. Choosing patience when reaction feels easier, choosing clarity when confusion feels comfortable, choosing self-respect when old wounds whisper otherwise. As mastery grows, the cycles that once controlled you begin to lose their power because cycles rely on automatic behavior. Mastery breaks the automatic. It brings intention into every moment. And intention is the force that transforms your life from repetition into growth. Action is the force that reshapes your life because no matter how much you think, analyze, or plan, nothing changes until you move. Many cycles continue because the mind becomes trapped in endless loops of overthinking, imagining outcomes, predicting failures, questioning possibilities, replaying past mistakes. Overthinking creates the illusion of progress, as if thinking deeply enough will somehow unlock a different reality. But thought without action is just motion, without direction. It keeps you busy while keeping you stuck. When you break the habit of overthinking and replace it with intentional action, the cycles that once controlled your life begin to lose their influence. Overthinking drains energy and confidence. It freezes you in place. It magnifies fear. The more time you spend thinking about whether you are ready, the less ready you feel. The more you analyze the risks, the more the risks appear larger than they actually are. This creates hesitation, and hesitation strengthens the cycle, because the longer you wait, the harder it feels to act. Action, on the other hand, disrupts the cycle by creating new experiences. Experiences that reshape your beliefs, challenge your fears, and expand your understanding of what is possible. Action is a commitment to movement, even when clarity is incomplete. You do not need to feel fully confident to act. You simply need to be willing to take the next step. Confidence grows from action, not before it. Every time you take a step, no matter how small, you break a piece of the pattern that kept you trapped. You prove to yourself that progress is possible. You give your mind evidence that contradicts your fears. You create new momentum. And momentum is the greatest enemy of stagnant cycles. Taking action also means choosing what aligns with your growth rather than what aligns with your comfort. Comfort is familiar, predictable, and safe, but it rarely leads to transformation. Many people remain inside painful cycles because the discomfort they know feels easier than the uncertainty of change. But when you act, you challenge this illusion. You remind yourself that growth requires stepping into unfamiliar territory. You discover that uncertainty is not a threat, it is an opening. Action transforms your identity. Every action you take is a message you send to yourself about who you are becoming. When you take steps toward healing, you begin to see yourself as someone capable of healing. When you set boundaries, you begin to see yourself as someone deserving of respect. When you pursue opportunities, you begin to see yourself as someone worthy of success. Identity is shaped more by what you do than by what you think. Action also disrupts emotional loops. When emotions rise, fear, sadness, anger, doubt, the mind tends to sink deeper into thought. But action shifts your state. A walk outside, a difficult conversation, a journal entry, a decision you've been avoiding. All of these actions break emotional momentum. They create space between you and the intensity of the feeling. This space is where clarity forms. Most importantly, action transforms the stories you tell yourself. I can't, I'm stuck, or nothing changes. With every step you take, these stories lose strength. You begin to rewrite your narrative through lived experience, not imagined fear. This is why action is essential. It interrupts the old, invites the new, and proves to your own mind that change is possible. Letting go is one of the hardest parts of growth because it requires emotional courage, clarity, and the willingness to release what once felt meaningful, comforting, or familiar. Many cycles persist not because they are good for you, but because the attachments you carry are stronger than the pain they cause. Letting go is not an act of rejection. It is an act of self-respect. It is the recognition that not everything or everyone is meant to stay, and that holding on too tightly can damage your peace, your potential, and your sense of self. Attachments form for many reasons: emotional dependency, fear of loneliness, the hope that someone will change, the memories of better moments, or the belief that leaving means failure. These attachments may feel like love or loyalty, but in reality, they often become chains that keep you tied to cycles of disappointment, self-betrayal, or stagnation. Letting go requires you to look beyond the emotional pull and see the truth of the situation. That some people are chapters, not lifetimes. Some habits are temporary supports, not permanent foundations. Some dreams were meant for an older version of you, not the person you are becoming. Letting go also means understanding that loss is not always a negative experience. Sometimes losing something clears space for something better. Sometimes losing someone reveals sides of yourself you never developed because you were too busy holding on. Sometimes loss is simply the universe removing what you outgrew. When you shift your perspective from "why did this happen to me?" to "what is this trying to teach me?" you begin to see that letting go is an invitation to evolve, not a punishment. One of the greatest obstacles to letting go is the mind's attachment to what is familiar. Even painful situations can feel safe because the mind knows how to navigate them. Uncertainty, on the other hand, feels threatening simply because it is unknown. This is why people stay in relationships that hurt them, workplaces that drain them, or habits that limit them. But true growth demands that you choose the unknown when the known is destroying your spirit. Letting go is the bridge between who you were and who you can become. Emotional attachment can also be rooted in hope. The hope that things will return to how they once were. Hope is beautiful, but it becomes harmful when it blinds you to reality. Sometimes the person you want someone to be is not the person they are capable of becoming. Sometimes the potential you see exists only in your imagination. Letting go requires accepting reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. This acceptance is painful, but it is also liberating. It frees you from the cycle of waiting, wishing, and hurting. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop sacrificing your own well-being for someone else's presence. It means you stop giving energy to situations that cannot reciprocate. It means you choose yourself, not selfishly, but wisely. You create emotional space for peace, alignment, and new beginnings. When you let go, you reclaim your power. You reclaim your energy. You reclaim your ability to decide who enters your life and who no longer deserves a place in it. Letting go is not the end of your story. It is the moment you turn the page. The moment you decide that a cycle ends with you, something shifts inside. Something subtle, quiet, yet incredibly powerful. It is not the world that changes first. It is your internal stance. You stop negotiating with the pain. Stop making excuses for the things that drain you, and stop waiting for the right moment that never comes. This decision is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is a deep, steady declaration. I am no longer available for what hurts my growth. And this inner commitment becomes the turning point where repetition turns into transformation. Cycles continue because you allow them. They depend on your participation. Your responses, your availability, your tolerance, your silence. When you finally say, enough, you interrupt the pattern. The cycle can no longer proceed in the same way because you are no longer showing up as the same person. The moment you choose yourself, truly choose yourself, the past loses its grip. A cycle cannot break you once you refuse to feed it. This decision, however, is rarely easy. It comes after long periods of exhaustion, reflection, or even heartbreak. It comes after you've seen the same outcome enough times to recognize the pattern clearly. But once the realization settles, the decision becomes unavoidable. You understand that continuing the cycle will cost you more than leaving it. You recognize that staying where you've always been will keep you from becoming who you are meant to be. And even though fear whispers reasons to remain stuck, something stronger inside you whispers the truth. Staying the same is no longer an option. Breaking a cycle is not a single moment of action. It is a series of choices you make every day. The choice to set boundaries and honor them. The choice to walk away when old temptations return. The choice to stay patient when impatience once controlled you. The choice to speak when silence once kept you small. The choice to stay consistent when inconsistency once ruled your life. Your decision becomes the anchor you return to whenever the old pattern tries to pull you back. A powerful thing happens when you make this decision. You begin to see what you never saw before. You notice the early signs of the pattern. You recognize the emotions that used to blind you. You observe the behaviors that once manipulated you. You feel the difference between peace and chaos, clarity and confusion, truth and illusion. Your awareness sharpens, and with that awareness comes strength, the strength to choose differently. This decision also transforms your relationship with yourself. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to see that your future is not determined by your past. You begin to realize that every ending you create for yourself becomes the beginning of something new. You understand that cycles are not broken by force. They are broken by choice, consistency, and conviction. When you decide that a cycle ends with you, you shift the direction of your life. You become the author of your story rather than a character trapped in a repeated script. You step into a level of self-respect that leaves no room for anything that diminishes your worth. And from this point on, your life begins to align with the person you are becoming, not the person you used to be. When you finally understand your patterns, take responsibility for your part in them, cultivate inner mastery, replace overthinking with action, release what no longer deserves to stay, and choose, deeply choose, that the cycle ends with you. Something remarkable happens. you step into a new version of yourself, one that is not defined by past wounds or old narratives, but by intention, clarity, and courage. You begin to walk through life with a different posture, more grounded, more aware, more connected to who you truly are. The cycles that once controlled you lose their influence because you have risen above the level at which they were created. This transformation does not unfold overnight. It is built through discipline, self-honesty, and the willingness to interrupt familiar patterns even when it feels uncomfortable.